Dan Patrick for my friend Louis Flory and Ability Tree Experts.
Spring is here and summer just around the corner, which means it's time to deep root fertilize your trees in addition to spraying for insects and disease. Let Ability Trees help maintain their value and repair all damage. Fed and pruned tree will be less susceptible to wind damage and uprooting. Caring for the beautiful and valuable trees on your property that you can't replace should be done by experts. And the experts I use, it's very clear. It's Ability Tree Experts and Louis Flory, my friend for over 40 years. Gosh, this guy is the pro when it comes to taking care of trees. You know, pruning is important for the health of your trees, and pruning limits resistance to spring storms and allows the sun and fresh air into the canopy. Trees can be in distress several months without showing any signs, so don't wait to protect your investment at 281-441-4179, 281-441-4179, or visit their website at abilitytrees.com. Right now, Ability Trees is giving a deep root feeding with every tree prune. Ability Trees.
You're listening to the Voice of Texas. AM 700 KSEV Tomball and AM 1540 KGBC Galveston.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. From the Midwest to the East Coast, it's promising to be a very hot week. National Weather Service meteorologist Scott Kleebauer says extreme heat will impact parts of the United States this holiday week.
Especially by Wednesday, we'll start seeing it really impact areas of like the Ohio Valley, through the Mid-Atlantic and into the Northeast. And it looks like the main, like the primary time frame for like the most extreme heat will be on Thursday and Friday, both. We're looking at Thursday probably being the period where we see the most potential for record highs.
Kleebauer says one of the center's biggest recommendations is to stay hydrated and have access to shady areas and air conditioning. The Supreme Court has issued a ruling on one of the most consequential election law cases in years. More on this from correspondent Bernie Bennett.
In the 5-4 majority opinion, the sharply divided court ruled that the federal election day statutes do not preempt a Mississippi law that allows mail-in ballots to be counted after the election day. The Mississippi law allows mail-in ballots as long as they're postmarked by and received within 5 days of election day, an allowance the court said in its Monday opinion is within the rights afforded to states by the Constitution. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments in March. They have 5 more majority cases to rule on this week, including birthright citizenship. Bernie Bennett, Washington.
The Supreme Court says Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook can remain in her job for now, a rebuke to President Trump's bid to wrest control of the nation's central bank. At the same time, the justices Monday dramatically expanded presidential power, upholding the Republican president's firing of the heads of other independent federal agencies. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 306 points, the Nasdaq rose 522, the S&P advanced 86. More at townhall.com.
No one likes saying that last goodbye to the furry friend they've loved for years. It's heartbreaking. What makes it harder is knowing how quickly time goes by. One day they're racing to the door. The next day they're moving slower, sleeping more. You start wondering, is there anything I can do? Most of us would do anything to love them longer. Dog owners don't realize the live nutrients their dog needs to thrive. They're missing from their food. That's where Rough Greens comes in. It's America's #1 dog supplement you sprinkle on their food. It's packed with probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, and 20 live vitamins and minerals to support digestion, energy, and overall health from the inside out. It's all natural, made in the USA. Thousands of dogs are feeling younger, more energetic, and healthier than they have in years. Get a free Jumpstart trial bag for your dog today. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com. Use the discount code MikeG. Rough is RUFF. Roughgreens.com. Promo code MikeG. Rough Greens makes any dog food better. Rough Greens.
Wildfires in the western United States have now become deadly. Correspondent Donna Warder has more on this story.
3 firefighters died and 2 were injured while battling 2 wildfires along the Colorado-Utah border. The U.S. Wildland Fire Service says the firefighters were part of an interagency response to the Knowles and Gore fires on Saturday. Meanwhile, the largest blaze, the Cottonwood Fire, grew to more than 144 square miles this weekend. Alyssa Mason, a spokesperson assigned to the fire, says they're keeping their eyes on weather conditions.
I have heard that we are going to have some cooler temperatures, some higher humidities, and less wind. So those are all good things. If there is a shift in wind direction, then that could be good or bad, depending on what that shift looks like.
I'm Donna Warder.
News and analysis at townhall.com. From Washington, I'm Keith Peters reporting.
This program is brought to you in part by Ability Tree Experts. Ability Tree Experts, Houston's leading tree care professionals. Call 281-441-4179.
From the KSEV Weather Center, tonight expect a clear sky with high humidity as temperatures drop to 78 degrees. Tomorrow will bring mostly sunny skies with humidity and the possibility of an afternoon thunderstorm reaching a high of 93. Tomorrow night will remain mainly clear and humid with temperatures around 78 degrees. Looking ahead to Wednesday, expect partly sunny conditions with the chance of a thunderstorm in some areas in the afternoon and temperatures climbing to 95 degrees. With the KSEV Weather Center forecast, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jason Caterina.
This is Kevin O'Hara with O'Hara & Company Real Estate. At O'Hara & Company Real Estate, we believe in God, family, and country. In the past 50 years, people have been trying to remove all three of those from our thinking. Fight for what you believe in and protect your freedoms before they're all taken away. Don't let anyone infringe on your rights. If you need a real estate company, call O'Hara & Company Real Estate, 281-373-3393, or look us up on the web at o'harare.com. I'm Kevin O'Hara. God bless America, and God bless Texas.
Thank goodness our weather experts are providing us with hurricane tracking charts and reminding us to be prepared for big storms. But they overlook one very important thing, the damage and destruction from broken limbs and uprooted trees. Call Louis Flory at Ability Tree Experts today, my friend for nearly 40 years, at 281-441-4179, and let him explain how this problem can be minimized with professional pruning. You see, when the tree canopy is too thick and dense, the tree can be completely blown over and tree limbs broken, causing terrible damage to the tree and maybe your home. Where tree limbs break, sap will ooze, and that attracts harmful insects. So you need to call Louis Flory today at 281-441-4179 and have his experts come out and professionally prune your trees to withstand sudden storms that are so frequent this time of year. Visit their website at abilitytrees.com. That's 281-441-4179. Ability Tree Experts, Houston's leading tree care professional.
Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's ChrisXradio. ChrisXradio.
What we need right now is a clear message to the people of this country. This message must be read in every newspaper, heard on every radio, seen on every television. This message must resound throughout the entire interlink.
And now, your host.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Chris X.
Seemed like it was just getting started, and then now here it is over. It's not even fair. Goes by way, way, way too fast. Good afternoon. Welcome to ChrisXradio. I'm the aforementioned X-Man. Glad to have you here on the Voice of Texas on ChrisXradio. Oh, it's a hell of a week, isn't it? I'm looking at the temperature in my area. It says 101 right now. 101. It is hot. It is very hot. It got hot quick. You seemed to warm up a little sooner than normal, I guess, this year. We're in Texas. Like I said, someone asked, hey, what is the weather like in Texas in August? And the response is, have you ever been cremated? Well, there you go. There's the weather in Texas. Once again, welcome to the program. I'm the aforementioned X-Man. Glad to have you here with us on the first day of the week of our 250th anniversary. That's right. This week we'll celebrate July 4th coming this Saturday. That will be the 250th anniversary of these great United States of America. But don't worry, only 8% of Democrats describe America as the greatest country, while 16% said among the greatest, 23% describe America as worse than average, and 15% say is among the worst. I was watching on Twitter earlier, some of the World Cup reactions, watching these fans, these World Cup fans come over here, and they're just the Japanese fans went to a Mexican restaurant, and the back and forth was amazing. They said our food was already being delivered to the table before we ordered it, and then they had to ask the waiter. They said, "Hey, listen, we haven't ordered the food," and the waiter said, "No, that's okay. These are chips and salsa. They're free." It's like, but no, we have not earned these. They just come with the table, man. That's it. So then they ate the chips, and they were like, wow, this is crazy. We get to eat chips and salsa for free. And then here comes another plate of chips and more salsa. And he says, chips and salsa, unrequested, free. Stop the waiter. We have not earned these. They just come with the table. Hospitality is a debt. No, it's different here in America. Things are different. It's unbelievable to these people from Japan. They come over here and like, wait, this doesn't make sense. None of this makes any sense. Well, you're right. It doesn't even make sense here, but they love America. Looking at the various people from all over the world, my God, they come over to this country and go, this is the most amazing, greatest country, and we got spoiled, rotten brats that live here in our country that are what? They hate it. They hate America. They want to go to one of these other third world hellholes. Apparently not to Haiti. They've determined they agree with President Trump. Haiti is now a crap hole. You can't send the temporary protected status Haitians back to their crap hole nation, but they'll attack Trump for calling it a crap hole. All right. By the way, coming up at the bottom of the hour, we have historian and writer. He's a host of the Sons of History podcast. His name is Alan Wakim. He has a 3-part series with a couple of articles that are already posted over at the Epoch Times. The first is titled A Resolution for Independence. The second, 250 years ago, South Carolina defeats the British Empire. We're going to catch up with Alan. We'll talk about his 2 articles that have already been released, so you can go follow along if you want and go read them over at the Epoch Times. And then we'll get to his 3rd article as well. So we got a lot to talk with Alan about. We'll be celebrating the 250th anniversary all week. I've got my 1776-2026 shirt on. I've got the, what is it? That says 250 years. I got a few shirts for the anniversary or the celebration. So I've got those on. So I'm wearing that. By the way, if you're watching the video, we always stream the video over at I didn't see it on Facebook earlier, but I saw it on Twitter X. We are on Twitter X. Oh yeah, you can see on Twitter X right now the 1776, 2026 right on there. And then of course, if you want to go watch the video later, if you're listening, don't try to pull the video up while you're driving. Wait and then go check it out later. So the videos are always posted immediately upon completion of the program, and like I said, they're airing until then. So the KSEV Radio page. You can also go to Rumble or YouTube, and you can always find the program in those locations. So if you want to go check out I'll be wearing my independent shirts all week. So, and by the way, yeah, this is coming up on the Friday, Saturday is the 4th of July. I cannot believe it is already the 4th of July. We always have wings over, we have freedom over Houston. We have wings over Houston every year, but it's not on July 4th. The Amigos always broadcast live from Wings Over Houston. By the way, I think the Amigos will be a best of this coming Friday. I think they're taking the Friday off for the holiday. So I listened to the Amigos on Friday. They weren't able to get their very special guest on. So, but it was understandable. He was sort of at the White House. And then today, we've got a lot going on. Some responses from the White House. The Supreme Court, it's Supreme Court season, as Dana Lash was saying earlier, and it is. They have all kinds of rulings. They ruled today that state laws allow for the counting of mail-in ballots after Election Day, that they're not in violation of federal law. This is, of course, tough for the President Trump administration and the Republican National Committee, because we're tired of watching elections be determined days and weeks later. Election day's done. It's Election Day over. We got looks like a winner, and then, sorry, we're just going to keep counting ballots. Now, supposedly, they're only going to count ballots that are either, postmarked the day of the election or before. I think if we're going to do this way, I think that we should probably make it, if you're going to do mail-in ballots, you should have to have them in by a certain date. Therefore, they're in by Election Day, and anything that isn't in by Election Day, it does not count. Because otherwise it just goes on and on and on. But for some reason, 5-4 ruling, Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts, they joined Sonia Sotomayor, the wise Latina, Elena Kagan, the wise softball player, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, the wise idiot. The two principles that are important here. Well, post-election day receipt. Okay, yeah. It's always a bad sign when you find yourself in agreement with well, just say the idiots of the court. The Supreme Court also ruled today that Congress cannot shield the heads of independent regulatory agencies from presidential removal and overturned a landmark 1935 precedent. They also ruled, but it's funny, they blocked President Trump's attempt to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, ruling that the president failed to provide her the procedural protections required by law. It was another 5-4 decision. Oh. So there you go. This one, though, is interesting because had some different people. Also, this is kind of crazy. President Trump vowed to continue to fight the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit brought against him. After the Supreme Court declined to consider that case today, Trump took to Truth Social to respond to the decision. We can get into that. We got the a Democrat nominee for the Texas Land Commissioner position has defended James Talarico at the state convention last week. Ben Flores told the crowd at the Texas Democrat Convention in Corpus, the next time they say James is trans, we're all trans. When they say that James is a gay tofu-eating vegan, we're all gay tofu-eating vegans. And when he says James is going to hell, we all say we're going to hell. I don't know about how well that strategy is going to play out, but we'll play that audio coming up for you as well. And then on Sundays, NBC's Meet the Depressed. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy said that President Trump is trying to rig the election with the Save America Act, making people prove they're citizens of this country by showing a form of ID that is legally, I don't know, I haven't met anyone that has any trouble getting an ID, but for some reason we can't do this. Oh, no. That's trying to rig elections. Who do you think are voting in these elections, Mr. Murphy? I think he knows exactly who's voting in elections, and that's why the Democrats are so dug in. RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz say that more than 1 million people without Social Security numbers have enrolled in Obamacare. There's no fraud there, I'm sure. I'm sure everything's just fine. It's all good. It's fine. Everything's fine. All right, so let's listen to the Democrat nominee for Texas Land Commissioner and hear what he had to say about Talafrico, Mr. James, running for office.
Next time they say that James is trans, we're all trans. When they say James is a gay tofu-eating vegan, we're all gay tofu-eating vegans. And when they say James is going to hell,
we're right with them.
We'll say we're all going to hell. But joke's on them.
Is it? Once again, the more that comes out from when Mr. Talafrico says, the more we realize he is a radical leftist. That along with being a fanboy of a tranny podcast. So he's a big fan of the trans podcast. He was just such a fanboy and so excited about what? This is going to be it's hilarious because we got James Talafrico for the Democrats, and then we got Ken Paxton. So we got one guy, you've got the wonky-eyed guy who looks kind of weird, Ken Paxton, and then you got Pedo O'Rourke. So there's that. Somebody called James Talafrico over the weekend Pedo O'Rourke. And I'm like, what? I thought that was funny. I didn't say it. I just heard people tell me things. Oh, so Beto O'Rourke wasn't good enough, I guess, so they had to move on to trans and Beto O'Rourke. So it's kind of weird. I think we live in bizarre times. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back. We can get into some of these rulings with the Supreme Court, and then we'll pick up with our guest. He's a historian, a writer. He's a host of the Sons of History podcast. He's got a 3-part series. A couple of articles are already posted over at the Epoch Times. It is Alan Joachim. He will join us here at the bottom of the hour, not the next segment, but the following. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll pick up, and then, like I said, we'll talk with Alan Joachim here at the bottom of the hour. I'm looking forward to catching up with him. Alan, the guy studies history. Oh, man, does he study history. And he goes and visits historical sites and does really cool stuff. If you haven't been able to check out the Sons of History podcast, if you're remotely interested in American history, you really need to check it out. And make sure you're reading Alan's work over at the Epoch Times, because they've got the first article came out, was it last week, a resolution for independence, and then this is the second article, just came out yesterday. 250 years ago, South Carolina defeats the British Empire. All right, you're listening to ChrisX Radio. We're just getting started. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Let's be honest. Every business says they're better, but the ones that earn the prestigious BBB seal back it up. That's why it's the sign of a better business. And it instantly identifies reputable businesses you can trust. So look for the BBB seal, because it's looking out for you. It's the sign of a better business. And find a better business anytime at bbb.org. That's bbb.org.
Plumbing emergencies never happen at a convenient time. Nix Plumbing offers free estimates and free second opinions. Call Nix Plumbing and Sewer Services, 713-868-9907, or visit us on the web, nixplumbing.com.
MPL 38548.
The best in financial talk and more. Money Matters, every Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. till noon, here on AM 700 KSEV, AM 1540 KGBC, and streaming online at KSEVradio.com.
Thank goodness our weather experts are providing us with hurricane tracking charts and reminding us to be prepared for big storms. But they overlook one very important thing, the damage and destruction from broken limbs and uprooted trees. Call Louis Flory at Ability Tree Experts today, my friend for nearly 40 years, at 281-441-4179, and let him explain how this problem can be minimized with professional pruning. You see, when the tree canopy is too thick and dense, the tree can be completely blown over and tree limbs broken, causing terrible damage to the tree and maybe your home. Where tree limbs break, sap will ooze, and that attracts harmful insects. So you need to call Louis Flory today at 281-441-4179 and have his experts come out and professionally prune your trees to withstand sudden storms that are so frequent this time of year. Visit their website at abilitytrees.com. That's 281-441-4179. Ability Tree Experts, Houston's leading tree care professional.
This is Kevin O'Hara with O'Hara & Company Real Estate. The country and the world are changing for the good. If you're watching the mainstream media, that's not the message you're getting. They've been brainwashing you for years. Dig into the real news and wake up. You were born free and freedom was given to you by God. The word government is derived from the Greek words meaning to steer a rudder. That should tell you something. God put us here to love one another no matter what race, religion, or ethnic group. And I'll admit sometimes I have a problem doing this, but I'm working on it. If you need a real estate company, call O'Hara & Company Real Estate at 281-373-3393 or look us up on the web at o'harare.com. Also, if you're looking for a home builder, remodeling, patio cover, any type of construction projects, give O'Hara Homes a call at 281-373-3393. And here's my grandson.
This is Katie Martinez. God bless America and God bless Texas. One more thing. God bless my pawpaw.
Welcome back to ChrisXradio. Glad to have you here with us as we have reached the week of our 250th anniversary here with America. Saturday's July 4th. I'm looking forward to celebrating the 250th anniversary of this great nation we call America, this experiment in democracy. And if you're watching New York, they're trying to change it to communism, socialism, whatever. But for those of us here in the great state of Texas, the greatest country that ever existed, in tandem with the United States of America, okay, I get it. Yeah, so we're doing pretty good. We'll celebrate July 4th of this coming Saturday. I cannot believe it is already July 4th, and that explains why. Oh, wait, it's dropped a couple degrees over here in my area. It's down to 99. Ooh, man, that's a cold front. I'm getting a little chilly. Maybe I need to go put on another one of my America shirts. I got my America 250th, 1776, 2026, and then 250th birthday of America shirt on. If you're watching over at any of our platforms, you can always go see it over at on Rumble or YouTube or Twitter X. I've shared it over there as well, so you can go find it at any of those. Of course, Facebook. I just shared it on Facebook as well, so you can go check it out over there. And then, so do that if you're not driving. If you're out driving, then keep both hands on the wheel. Realize the video will be posted as soon as it's done, so you can always go watch it later. But I've got my shirt, my America shirt. I'm going to be wearing a shirt like this all week long. All America shirts this week. That's how I'm rolling. That's what I'm doing here on the 250th anniversary here of America. I am proud. Once again, it's funny, I'm always proud of America because this is the greatest country that has ever existed. Watching all of the people from Europe or Japan or Korea come over here for the World Cup, the FIFA, has been incredible. They're amazed at what we have and how amazing this country is, and then realize as much as these people come over here and see what is actually available and what we have to offer here in America, only 8% of Democrats describe America as the greatest country. 16%, it's among the greatest. These obviously are people that don't go to other countries, or you got 23% of Democrats describing America as worse than average. I mean, what are these other countries that I don't know about that are better than America? Can somebody enlighten me on those? I don't know. 15% that the United States is among the worst country, and 4% said America is the worst altogether. Happy 250 America. Happy 250th birthday from the Democrats who hate everything. They hate you. They hate me. They hate celebrating America. They hate the reflecting pond. So the reflecting pool, so they're cutting that up, tearing it up, putting in algae, destroying everything. They just hate everything except apparently their freedom to hate the country. If I figured if I lived in a country that I really hated, especially one that doesn't, force people to stay there, I think I'd leave the country. I mean, would you stay in a country that you really hate? Why would you stay there? Oh, well, because maybe I have opportunities here I don't have elsewhere. Okay, well, maybe you ought to include that in your discernment, dear genius. Anyway, coming up here in the next segment, we've got Alan Joaquim. He's a historian, a writer. He's a host of the Sons of History podcast. He has a 3-part series with a couple of articles that are already posted over at the Epoch Times. By the way, I'm not giving anything away. I want you guys to go read them. The first one, which I've already read, is a resolution for independence. And then the second article came out yesterday, 250 years ago. South Carolina defeats the British Empire. It's pretty good. He's got a third article in tandem that will be coming out probably sometime this week. So we'll talk about that as well. I always enjoy talking with Alan because he's such a history buff. I mean, he's a historian. So, and his writing is great over at the Epoch Times, so I encourage you to go read his work, but also to watch the Sons of History. His podcast is great. He does a great job on it, and it is, like I said, it's really good. It's him and his partner, and they do a great job. So I truly enjoy his podcast. It's fun to watch, and like I said, also just looking at his enjoyment of our history and how, well, you talk about somebody who knows what a great country is. it's really hard to gauge how great this nation is if you haven't taken the opportunity to go and study the history. Now, just like every other country, yeah, there's issues. We've not been perfect. But then again, last time I checked, neither has anyone else. There are no other perfect nations, at least not from what I've seen. And from what I gather, there is more opportunity in this great nation than any other on the planet. It's not even close. If you doubt how great America is, go look and listen to these people that have come from Europe, people from Norway, people from, you name it, all over the world that have come here to enjoy the World Cup, and they're blown away. The Japanese people go into a Mexican restaurant and can't even fathom they're getting free chips and salsa. That stuff doesn't happen in other countries. So it's pretty amazing. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back and catch up with our guest. Alan Joaquim will join us here next, and we'll dive into both of these articles over at the Epic Times, and we can talk about some of the breakdown. Once again, it's always hard to interview Alan because there's so much information, because the guy's such a history buff. We'll try to keep it to the 3 articles, and also of course, you can see they're lining right up with the 250th anniversary of this great experiment in democracy, the republic known as the United States of America. All right, don't you go anywhere. Alan Joaquim joins us here next on ChrisXradio.
My guest this week will be Cody Johnson from Garage Door Doctor. For all of your garage door needs, contact Garage Door Doctor at 281-343-3632.
Join Joe every Saturday at 1 o'clock here on AM 700 KSEV and AM 1540 KGBC, the voice of Texas.
Hi, y'all. It's Kathy from Baker Mortgage. You know, with all the scary stuff we've been through, it's still true that timing is everything, and the time to buy is now. But don't go looking without a solid pre-approval in hand. And this includes an application and a detailed discussion about property taxes. If you didn't have the talk, about property taxes, you really don't know what you're pre-approved for. That should make you wonder what else they may have left out. Mortgages are personal. Let's face it, we're dealing with your home and your money, and it doesn't get much more personal than that. When it's the largest transaction that most people will ever be involved in, imagine having someone on your side looking out after you. What a concept. We audit your closing statement to make sure you're not paying for things that you're not supposed to. Do you think your big bank's going to do that? Probably not. For all of your mortgage needs, call us at Baker Mortgage. I promise you'll be glad you did. We're at 281-313-MOVE or go directly to bakermortgage.com.
Equal housing lender. License number 263213.
When it comes to garage doors, no one knows more than the doctor. Garage Door Doctor.
We got a call late New Year's Eve. A father with big plans for his family the next day said his garage door spring just snapped. He couldn't get his car out and wouldn't be able to get his family to where they needed to go. He felt stuck and alone. So we showed up fast with the right spring and the right parts to fix it right. We didn't talk about the price. We didn't wait till the morning. We fixed it right then. Because at Garage Door Doctor, it's never just about the job. It's about the person behind it. The dad, the veteran, the grandpa, the neighbor. Hi, I'm Tommy Mello, owner of Garage Door Doctor. When you need help, we're the ones that show up. Call Garage Door Doctor today or schedule online at garagedoordoctor.biz. We fix garage doors fast with quality parts designed to last a lifetime because we're proud to serve the people who rely on us.
When it comes to garage doors, no one knows more than the doctor. Garage Door Doctor.
Well, someone's been caught stealing something. Welcome back to ChrisXradio. It is time to catch up with our guest. Alan Joaquim joins us now. He is a historian. He is also a writer. He's the host of the Sons of History podcast. He's got a 3-part series now. 2 of the articles have already been posted over at the Epic Times. The first one is titled 250 Years Ago, a resolution for independence. And then the second article, 250 years ago, South Carolina defeats the British Empire. Now, these are the first two in a series of three that are coming up here. Well, interesting timing here with the 250th anniversary of this great experiment we call America. Alan, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Always great to catch up with you.
Howdy, Chris. It's always an honor being with you.
Well, it's great to have you on the program. I know you're big and moved on to television interviews and things, so I appreciate you slumming it with us here on the radio this afternoon. So I'm glad to have you on the program.
We got to remember the little people who are always there for us in the early days. So,
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, us little people will always be there for you. Okay, so I want to try to focus, first of all, with the 250th anniversary of America coming up, clearly it ties in with your articles. I mentioned earlier, you're such a wealth of information when it comes to history, especially regarding our nation, but, it's even greater than that. But when it comes to the country, you have so much information. So I wanted to really sort of focus on just your articles for this week as we go up to the 250th anniversary here of this great country. Now, your first article that came out, what was it? I guess last week, the 250 years ago, a resolution for independence. Let's talk about that one first, and then we'll work with the one that just came out yesterday. And then, of course, we can also do a little tease for your next article. So let's talk about the first article. First of all, America is an experiment in democracy, a republic, if you will, and we've made it, we've only got about, 4 or 5 more days to go to make it to 250 to get there. Do you think we'll do it, or do you think we're not going to make it?
Oh, I think we'll do it until maybe the next election, but it is an experiment, and what a lot of people don't understand is that all the other countries in the world, with the exception of the Dutch Republic and Switzerland, all the countries were either empires, kingdoms, principalities, nothing of the kind that we had where the people can actually create a government by their own, with their own consent, where laws were created with their own consent. So it was a great experiment. And so when people criticize the fact that certain things didn't come out right in the early days, well, you have to remember that we were still in the infancy. It was still just a brand new experiment. So, but we've been getting better and better over the decades, over the centuries.
Boy, you're right on. Nothing's perfect. In fact, I've never seen a perfect human being or a perfect country, but especially when you start looking at the history of the world and then even what's going on right now in the world. And when you start comparing America to the rest of the world, a great example of looking how great this nation is has been all of the fans from all over the world that have come here for the World Cup, and just how blown away they are by how great America truly is, which is something that you don't really get a lot in the media unless you're reading stuff like what you're writing over at the Epic Times, and you go through, literally, you start from, I love how at the first article you've got, how literally you break it down to where you start from just a courier arriving in Philadelphia with a dispatch from Williamsburg, Virginia. Let's talk about where you begin with the article and kind of where you go through with the first one.
Okay, so after Thomas Paine, I got to go back a little bit. After Thomas Paine released his pamphlet, Common Sense, around that time, the king had pretty much declared war on the American colonies. So right afterwards, Paine's pamphlet came out that shifted the focus from rebelling against Parliament to actually becoming our own country. His pamphlet was the blueprint. And that independence fever was growing larger and larger in all the colonies in the first part of 1776. So in Virginia, they gave the Virginia Congress, or House of Burgesses, gave the Virginia delegates at the Second Continental Congress permission to go ahead, submit a motion for independence. And that's what Richard Henry Lee did. He stood up on June the 7th, and he gave his proposition, his resolution. They called it the Lee's Resolution, where he started with these united colonies are and ought to be free and independent states. And he presented two other things, where one was about foreign alliances, and the other was where we would have an established governmental constitution, which ended up becoming the Articles of Confederation. So that's what started the whole thing, and that's what the first article was about. There was a lot of debate. Now, the opponents, it's not that they were against declaring independence. They just felt that the timing was completely off because we didn't have a Navy. Our military was not anything as even what the British Empire had. The British had the best Navy, they had the best Army, and we were being attacked in Canada. My second article talks about how we were attacked in South Carolina. When Payne's Payne's pamphlet came out, Boston was occupied. So we were under siege, and the British were even instructing their Native American allies to attack us, especially the Mohawks and the Cherokees. So we were surrounded, and the opponents of independence, such as John Dickinson out of Pennsylvania or Edward Rutledge out of South Carolina, they were afraid that unless we get foreign alliances first and get an established unified government, we don't have a chance. But then John Adams and Benjamin Franklin were saying that until we show a commitment to independence, rather than being rebellious countrymen, rebellious subjects of the British Empire, no country like France or Spain are going to even bother giving us any type of treaty or an alliance or money to help us out.
We're talking with Alan Joaquin. Once again, he's a historian, he's a writer, he's the host of the Sons of History podcast. If you've not gone onto YouTube and checked it out, you really ought to. And once again, we're just literally getting into the first article that was released, part of a 3-part series over the Epoch Times. It is titled 250 Years Ago, A Resolution for Independence. One of the things I really enjoyed about the article, first of all, the history lesson is always great, but you go into the names of who's who. But not only that, here timing up with our 250th anniversary, you're given the dates. When the full assembly was reconvened, you mentioned it was on Saturday, June 8th. We're talking less than a month before the birth of the nation, which comes in on July 4th, 1776. This is pretty amazing history. And the other thing I know about you, Alan, is I know you go around the country and around the world and like to go study history. Have you been to these locations that you write about, and not only in these articles, but in your previous work as well?
Oh yeah, I've been to the only place I have not been to has been Yorktown. That's really the only place, and that'll be in the near future. But on June the 8th, like you were saying, when Richard Henry Lee presented the motion, they didn't debate on it. They said let's wait till tomorrow. So on Saturday the 8th, they reconvened, and they fought and debated and argued the entire day. So they decided, okay, they didn't work on Sunday, so let's come back on Monday the 10th. So when they came back on Monday the 10th, Edward Rutledge of South Carolina said, let's hold off, because it didn't look like it was gonna pass at that precise moment. But I don't think Rutledge wanted to kill the bill. I believe that he did want independence to some extent, but just like I was saying, not now. This is not the right time. But what ended up happening was they decided, let's give it 20 days, and let's go talk to our colonial assemblies and get instructions. Do they want us to vote for independence or not? Adams, Franklin, Jefferson, they were like, yes, let's do that. And they ended up creating 3 committees. One committee, known as the Committee of 5, they were to get a draft of a Declaration of Independence, so that if the resolution does pass, then we have it ready to go and we can present it and sign it. So Jefferson ended up writing it. It was Jefferson, Franklin, Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston of New York. So for about 20 days, there was a ceasefire, as I like to call it. On the 28th of June, Jefferson finished the declaration, the rough draft, and the other 4 guys looked at it and they gave in their input, and they presented the Declaration of Independence to John Hancock on the 28th of June. Now, there's a very famous photo, where the 5 men of the Committee of 5 are presenting the document to John Hancock, and everybody else is sitting around. Jonathan Trumbull, I think was his name. I know his last name was Trumbull. He did the painting. It's on like the $2 bill.
Yeah. No.
So that was on the 28th. Now, that's where I pivot to my second article. Also on June 28th, that was when the British attacked Charleston, South Carolina, in hopes of they wanted to invade the city and then take over the colony and then reestablish royal rule. And there was a 10-hour engagement in that one. And I didn't know if you wanted me to skip on to that article, but that was on the exact same day and around the same time as when Jefferson and the Committee of Five presented the rough draft of the document to John Hancock.
Yeah, this is okay. Now we've moved on to the second article, which, by the way, if you want to go check it out, they're both already posted over at the Epic Times. The second article, well, the first article is 250 years ago, a resolution for independence. And now we've moved to the second article, 250 years ago, South Carolina defeats the British Empire. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more fun, I guess, if you will, for being a historical perspective to look back at it. It doesn't sound like it was a lot of fun when they were doing this because, as you mentioned, these are a group of colonists who have just declared their independence from the King of England. And the King of England, well, he probably didn't like that none too much. I think he was interested in trying to keep these colonies. And then, of course, this moves to a very famous battle, which I don't know how many people study history these days, but this is an important battle especially considering the history of our nation. I want you to go through some of what you cover in your article.
Okay, so Henry Clinton, who was General Henry Clinton of the British, was the second in command behind William Howe. He was sent down to the Carolinas to kind of stir up trouble. There were a lot of loyalists in the South, and they wanted to stir up trouble and then set up a base of operations. If not in Cape Fear, North Carolina, then they were going to go for Charleston, South Carolina. At the time, Charleston was called Charlestown. Well, when Henry Clinton got to North Carolina, he found out that the Loyalist army that he was going to meet was thoroughly annihilated at the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge. So he kind of sat around and he waited for Lord Charles Cornwallis and Commodore Sir Peter Parker to show up. And the three of them then, they were going to actually try to set up a base of operations in Cape Fear, North Carolina. But because their Loyalist friends were there was no army. The Patriots pretty much controlled the entire coast. They decided, okay, let's go hit Charleston because we'd rather go there anyway. They have a nice port. Well, I don't know how it is now, but if you go to Charleston back then, to get into the harbor, there's a lot of shallow sandbars. So in order to get into the harbor without running aground, you have to pass by Sullivan's Island. So it's like a 4-mile by quarter-mile island. So they built a fort there because they knew the British were coming. So they built a fort, and it was never finished, but it was partially completed. But they put palmetto logs and sand to build the fort, and they had I think it was about 31 pieces of artillery. I don't remember off the top of my head. And so so when the British did show up, like right at the beginning of end of May and the beginning of June, they started showing up, and it took them several days to know where to go because remember how I said there were sandbars, so they were trying to navigate the sandbars. And Henry Clinton, what he did was first he ordered Charleston to surrender, and when they ignored him, he sent about 2,500 to 3,000 redcoats onto Long Island, which was about a mile northeast of Sullivan's Island. Now, around this time, George Washington's second in command, Charles Lee, shows up. Now, he shows up on June the 4th, and on the 8th, there's about 2,000 Continental soldiers from Virginia and North Carolina show up. But now, this was his vanguard. And that was the same day that Clinton delivered the ultimatum for them to surrender. So kind of bad timing on his part. So for several days, the winds were bad, the tides were bad, nothing worked on the British favor. And another thing that went bad for the British was that Clinton was informed that between Long Island and Sullivan's Island is a little inlet that's only about 18 inches deep. But then they found out that it's actually 7 feet deep. So they had to go by boat rather than cross it on foot. So what they were going to do was, as Peter Parker bombarded the fort, Henry Clinton would invade from the northeast. Well, again, they weren't able to cross it on foot, and the tides never worked for them. Well, on June 28th, the day the Committee of Five presented the document, the rough draft, to Hancock, the winds and the tide worked in the British favor, and that's when they attacked, and it was a 10-hour artillery duel. But what the British didn't realize is that when they were firing their artillery, when they hit the palmetto logs, instead of splintering and injuring the Americans, the artillery pieces just crashed right, and they kind of were absorbed by the sand and the palmetto logs. It just, like poof, like a little sponge. It would just go right in there, and it wasn't doing any damage to the fort. But our guys, on the other hand, were beating the hell out of them. They were shelling their ships. All their ships were damaged to some extent. 3 ships ran aground in a sandbar. One of them they had to abandon, and the British just scuttled it. And Peter Parker was injured. He got hit. Part of his uniform got ripped so that his butt was exposed to everybody. And it was a humiliating defeat for the British.
There's so many interesting elements about this. If you're a history nerd like me or like Alan, you see this stuff and you go, wow, this is very interesting. One, it brings up a couple of things. One, people need to understand when you look at the current skirmishes in the world with the fighting, this is nothing new. This has literally been taking place since the advent of our country back in 1775, 1776, and it happened long before that. But there's that aspect of it. But also when you start going into the details and the dates on how this sort of worked out and how, like I said, the interesting aspect of the trees and the sand and how we had, like I said, the upper hand when it came to it, it really rolls on and becomes a very interesting story. And then you even go into how about 6 days later, here's July 4th, Congress approves the Declaration of Independence, and that, I guess, brings us towards what will be your final article, which I'll let you name here because that's not come out. By the way, we're talking with Alan Joaquim. He's a historian, writer, host of the Sons of History podcast. Once again, we're talking about his 3-part series. 2 of his articles are already released. 250 years ago, A Resolution for Independence is the first, and then the second article, which we were just going through, South Carolina Defeats the British Empire. What is the title of your 3rd article, and when will this one be coming out, Alan?
Well, I released it yesterday, I should say I submitted it yesterday, and I told them that it would probably be best to release it sometime between the 1st and the 4th. That's going to be their call because, they have to go through it and fact check it and all that. But the article, you know what? I don't remember what I gave it. I know the word Declaration of Independence was in there, but it's about what took place between July the 1st and July the 4th. Because July the 1st was when everyone came back. They reconvened in Philadelphia for the Congress, and they began debate again. And this time, everybody already had made up their mind, except for a few. And, John Dickinson, he gave a passionate speech, and then John Adams replied and gave his passionate speech. And so they then did a preliminary vote. And in the preliminary vote, now in Congress, majority rules. So if a majority passes a bill, then the bill becomes law. But in this case, they decided that it had to be unanimous. There could be no dissenters. And the reason why is because if they were declaring independence, then these colonies are now going to have to be involved in a war that they did not want to participate. Now, that was A, bad for that colony, and B, they were afraid that the colonies would secede from the union that they had. There were really about 24 colonies altogether, British colonies, but only 13 of them rebelled. So they were afraid that, one of them would, 1 or 2 would pull out. Well, when they did the preliminary vote. the
I'm
night
going to have
before.
to stop you there. We're short on time, Alan, so I'm going to have to stop you there.
Mm-hmm.
One is, there's a couple of things here. One is, I want you to tell everybody how, one, they can go check out the Sons of History, your podcast, but also, like I said, and mention where they can go to the Epic Times to read these articles and then get this. This is something that you don't just strictly cover for the articles. You've gone through this sort of thing with the Sons of History podcast. You've been doing this for a few years now. Tell everyone how they can follow your podcast and, of course, read your articles and everything else.
Okay, well, if you go to, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we have our own website, thesonsofhistory.com. But if you go to YouTube and just do a search, The Sons of History, you'll find us. We got the big logo, the big red S on the white backfield. Just subscribe, and then you'll be able to see all our videos. We have mini videos, and then we have long videos. My articles, you'll find those at the Epic Times. Just search for 250 years. There is a 250th. Just look for the word 250th. They started doing that and highlighting many of my articles, which go back a few years, all the way to they go back to the Boston Tea Party. So they can find me there. So, because, listen, this was not a simple, okay, let's just sign on the dotted line and let's become an independent nation. It was nothing like that. This was, we are about to sign a document. We're going to hang for it if we get captured. The British and their allies completely surround us. We have a fight on our hands. And that's exactly what happened in New York City shortly after the Declaration of Independence was signed.
It's incredible work, and I'm always fascinated by, one, how good you do, but also how detailed you get and cover it. And like I said, I'm a fan of the Sons of History, your podcast, and, of course, your work over at the Epic Times. Alan Joaquim, thanks for being here. Always appreciate your time, and keep up the great work.
Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I always enjoy coming and talking to you. You're a good man and a good friend.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's Alan Joaquim. Once again, he's a historian, a writer, host of the Sons of History podcast. And once again, you can catch this three-part series of articles over at the Epic Times. I encourage you to go read his work. And then, of course, watch the podcast over at YouTube or thesonsofhistory.com. Make sure you're checking this out. If you're a fan of history, first of all, it's important to know it so we're not doomed to repeat it. But second of all, it is great work. And it's when you start really going into it, the way he puts it together along with his partner, it's fantastic. You almost feel like you're there, which is important because I think a lot of people have forgotten, especially as we approach the 250th anniversary of this experiment in democracy. All right, let's take a short break. I appreciate Alan Joaquim for joining us. We'll take a break, come back, wrap up this first hour, and get you locked and loaded for hour number 2.
Contact Edward Robinson at Professional Engineering. His website is profengineering.com or call today, 713-664-1264, Professional Engineering.
Hi, this is Michael Miller. Join me this weekend for the Backyard Bay radio program, now at our new time, Saturday mornings at 9 a.m., right here on AM 700 KSEV, The Voice.
Crack open a cold can of fun with Specs all summer long. Stock up on seltzers and canned cocktails at the lowest prices at Specs. Cheers to savings. Summertime means seltzers, ciders, canned cocktails, and more at the lowest prices. And with Specs, fill your cooler, stock up and save big on all your summer essentials at Specs. Wherever summer takes you, bring the flavor. Easy, breezy, ready to drink summer favorites are on sale at Specs. Summer's about sun, fun, and ready to drink cocktails. Find your favorite canned sips at Specs and save big all season long. And if you're looking to step up your cocktail game, get insider info on seasonal recipes, or online for same-day delivery, just go to specsonline.com because the fun starts here. Specs, wine, spirits, and finer foods. Cheers to savings.
Man, I always enjoy catching up with Alan. like I said, I consider myself a history nerd, but I'm nowhere close to where he is and what they do with the Sons of History, because he does such a good job with this. And I always appreciate catching up with him and, of course, having him on the program to talk about this history. This history is important, especially when you're approaching a historic landmark like celebrating your 250th year in existence. Now, in nation years, that's a relatively young thing. We're still a relatively young nation, and we're still going through changes, and we still have issues, but we are hands down, it's not even close, the greatest nation on the planet. So when you start looking at it from that perspective, you realize, like I said, I know people, they're idiots in our country that think, oh, no, the other countries are way better. Well, then why aren't you living there? Do they disallow you? Well, no. No, you can pretty much go just about anywhere you want. Just about any country will take you. But if you're a lame-o, they might throw you in prison. You definitely don't have the First Amendment. You definitely don't have some of these other amendments. You definitely don't have the freedom that we have here. This is a great country. We have our faults. There are people trying to tear it down every day. So it's good to go back and learn how we got here and what led to it and where we're headed. It's important. Once again, Alan McKeem, he's a writer, he's a host or historian, host of the Sons of History podcast, does great work. sonsofhistory.com. You can go get more information there and, of course, read his work. That three different articles regarding the 250th anniversary over the epic times. All right, hour number 1 is done. We'll come back. Hour number 2 is up next. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Voice of Texas, AM 700 KSEV Tomball and AM 1540 KGBC Galveston.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The Supreme Court releasing decisions on court cases prior to the summer recess. Correspondent Laura Winters on the results of a case involving the Fed.
On this ruling, a defeat for President Trump as the High Court rejects his attempt to fire a member of the Federal Reserve Board. She's faced accusations of mortgage fraud. The justice's ruling, Lisa Cook, should first be able to respond to the allegations, which she denies, before she's let go. Chief Justice Roberts writing the president cannot remove a member of the Fed at any time for any reason without any notice. It was a 5-4 decision, with conservative Brett Kavanaugh joining Roberts and the court's 3 liberal justices. Laura Winters reporting.
A heat wave will blast the eastern part of the U.S. this week.
Temperatures rising ahead of the July 4th holiday will feel hotter because of the high humidity with it. So says the National Weather Service. Officials also say several days of high temperatures will settle in across the lower Great Lakes and the Mid-Atlantic. In addition, high temps will reach the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys.
That's correspondent Andrew Stewart. Temperatures will reach well into the 90s and low 100s. Forecasters urge people to stay hydrated and in air-conditioned places if possible. The death toll from Venezuela's devastating back-to-back earthquakes now stands at more than 1,700 people. Town Hall News and our parent company Salem Media are partnering with Christian nonprofit Food for the Poor to rush emergency aid to victims of this tragedy. Listeners wanting to help can find an online banner at the top of our website at srnnews.com. On Wall Street, the Dow by 306 points, the Nasdaq rose 522, the S&P 500 advanced by 86. More at townhall.com.
Hey, I'm not one to say I told you so, but do you remember last year when I told you that Pure Talk was hands down the best wireless company that I'd ever used? Well, some of you were skeptical, but Consumer Reports just asked 120,000 people to rate every wireless company in America, including the big boys. Well, guess which company was the only company to get 5 stars in every category? Yeah. Pure Talk. Coverage, support, value, data. 5 stars across the board. No service contracts, no cancellation fees, just great U.S. customer service on a crazy fast 5G network for a fraction of what you've been paying. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I will encourage you one more time to dial pound 250, say micro, and switch to a 5-star American wireless company that won't let you down. Pure
This
Talk.
True Sand commentary is brought to you by Ability Tree Experts. Ability Tree Experts, Houston's leading tree care professionals. Call 281-441-4179.
From KSEV, here's political contributor Ben Strusand.
Most polling shows that Republicans are going to have a tough time winning majorities in both houses of Congress in November. Voters blame Trump for inflation and believe that many of the necessities they need to purchase have become unaffordable. 2 out of 3 voters don't believe that preventing Iran from building a nuclear weapon is worth the higher gas prices that they are paying. Voters never give a president credit for preventing bad things like a nuclear war from happening. President Trump should realize by now that the Islamic Republic will never agree to a deal that results in a Trump win. The mullahs read the polls and see the domestic political pressure to end the war. It's part of their strategy. We should stop chasing a bad deal. This does not mean that we should resume unlimited airstrikes, but rather targeted decapitation strikes against their leadership, as the Israelis used effectively. If Iranian leaders won't cut a deal, then let's get new ones. The real leverage we have against Iran is economic. We destroyed what Iran took decades to build. Their defense industrial base used to manufacture drones, missiles, and nuclear weapons. Inflation in Iran is running at 40%. The blockade collapsed the revenue stream used by the Revolutionary Guard Corps, their security services, and all the government infrastructure. If our blockade is allowed to continue and not stopped by Democrats and a few lame duck Republicans in Congress, we can eliminate the mullah's leverage over its people. We don't need regime change to pressure them into a better deal for us. Just perseverance. Intercepting what leaks out via Iran's shadow tanker fleet will speed the process. The best guess is this pressure will take 6 months to show results, right around the time of the elections. I'm Ben Strusand, and that's my view.
Ben Strusand, only on AM 700 KSEV.
Thank goodness our weather experts are providing us with hurricane tracking charts and reminding us to be prepared for big storms. But they overlook one very important thing, the damage and destruction from broken limbs and uprooted trees. Call Louis Flory at Ability Tree Experts today, my friend for nearly 40 years, at 281-441-4179, and let him explain how this problem can be minimized with professional pruning. You see, when the tree canopy is too thick and dense, the tree can be completely blown over and tree limbs broken, causing terrible damage to the tree and maybe your home. Where tree limbs break, sap will ooze, and that attracts harmful insects. So you need to call Louis Flory today at 281-441-4179 and have his experts come out and professionally prune your trees to withstand sudden storms that are so frequent this time of year. Visit their website at abilitytrees.com. That's 281-441-4179. Ability Tree Experts, Houston's leading tree care professional.
Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's ChrisX Radio.
What we need right now is a clear message to the people of this country. This message must be read in every newspaper, heard on every radio, seen on every television. This message must resound throughout the entire interlink.
And now, your host,
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
ChrisX.
Good evening and welcome to the second hour of ChrisX Radio. I'm the aforementioned X-Man. Glad to have you here with us as we get rolling here in the second hour of the program. I'll go ahead and open up the phones now. I know some of you guys were calling in earlier, but I had a great guest and I went a little long with Alan, so we didn't have time to take any calls in the first hour. But if you want to join us here in the second hour, 281-558-KSEV, 281-558-5738. I know a lot of you guys who listen to the program, you guys are bigger history buffs than I am. So I like to bring on, Alan Joaquim. He's host of the Sons of History podcast, and he's a writer with the Epic Times, and he's got that 3-part series of articles that just came out, 2 of the 3, 250 Years, A Resolution for Independence. The second article, 250 years ago, South Carolina defeats the British Empire, and then the third is coming out sometime this week. He's already submitted it, so it should be out here. It's always good to get a good little history refresher. And I know most of the listeners of this program, this station, you guys love history. So, and I've always said this. I always kind of misquote it to a certain degree, but I say those who do not study history are destined to repeat it. I think the actual quote is those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. And we live in a time where what's weird is I remember a lot of the stuff that Alan goes through, especially the history of our nation and Texas history, because I was lucky enough to be born and raised right here in Texas. I used to love, what's funny is I liked American history. That was a good class. I don't know if they teach it anymore. And then being in Texas, man, we got Texas history. So I used to get that. And I know, Alan went to same school that I did. We both graduated closely around the same time. I think he graduated a year before I did. So, yeah, they were teaching history back then. So I loved history. I always got good grades in history. I've always loved it. It is important for us to know how our nation, 1, how it came about, 2, how it was, formed, and 3, how we've, defended it and what we've had to do to not only make this nation, but to have made the greatest nation, in my opinion, that has ever existed. The United States of America offers more opportunity than any country on the planet ever has. The poor people are fat in our country. That doesn't really happen in other countries. It is easy for people who are uneducated as far as history to look in and then go, America sucks. A lot of Democrats they don't like America. There's a new poll that came out. Only 8% of Democrats describe America as the greatest country. Only 8%. That means 92% of Democrats don't think we're the greatest country. In fact, only 16% said it's even among the greatest. Well, I would like to know what these other countries are that are so great. I'm not dogging the other countries. There are some really cool countries out there. I enjoy, like I said, I don't like, my joke is, people are like, Chris, don't you want to travel to other countries? Not really. As soon as they invent the teleportation device, or, they share it with us, then I will consider going to the other countries. But I hate traveling. I hate being on a plane. I can't imagine being on a plane for 20-something hours. But there are great other countries. I do get it. Some of the European nations are amazing. Some elements of Great Britain are amazing. Some elements kind of suck. Like the report that we just got about them 250,000 young girls being raped by these Muslim groomer gangs. And they're treating and these women horribly. It was covered up by police. It was covered up by Parliament in England because these were girls that weren't necessarily what you would call from the right caste, because the caste system is still in full effect over there. I know it's hard to believe, but we don't live there, so we don't see it on a regular basis. We also don't see, unless you go and reach out and study, the invasion from these Muslim countries. There is an invasion taking place. There are these Muslim groomer gangs that have invaded the country. They pretend to assimilate, but they're not assimilating at all. Their goal is takeover. And we've seen this in multiple countries in Europe. It's happening in real time. And that report, that 250,000 young white girls underage that were raped, converted, beaten, tortured, poisoned, abused by these Muslim groomer gangs. And it was covered up by the authorities. It was covered up by the police. It was covered up. That's a terrible stain. That is a terrible thing. Does it mean that all of England is bad? No, it doesn't. England's not a bad country. But it makes me even prouder to be a part of America. We broke away from that. We broke away from their parliamentary and system of kings and oligarchy. And now we've got, it's funny here, 250 years into it, we've got our own oligarchy we're dealing with. There are a lot of problems we have in our country. But it is good to study history to know what got us here and also understand that history is being made right now. It's kind of like, have you heard Is it the Country Time Lemonade commercial? The good old days are being made right now. It's a great marketing slogan. In some cases, that is true. But it is good to understand how we got there. By the way, once again, follow Alan Joaquim. You can follow him on, like I said, the sonsofhistory.com. Sonsofhistory.com, his Sons of History podcast over at YouTube, and his 3-part series over at the Epic Times, just 250 years. Type that in. You'll start. 2 of them have been released. The 3rd one will be coming out. It was great talking to him, and I hated cutting him off, but we were way over. But I just wanted to get as much out. And like I said, if for some reason you haven't read the first 2 articles, go read them. They're short. They're not that long, but it's good little history lessons. And as we are in the week of the 250th anniversary here of America, July 4th is coming up this Saturday. Hard to believe today's the 29th of June. June is virtually over, and we're already at July 4th, which is amazing. And I plan to celebrate our country big time. I say big time. I'm such a lame-o when it comes to this kind of stuff, because we'll have freedom over Houston. I don't think I'm traveling anywhere this weekend. I'll be sticking around just enjoying the fact that we live in the greatest country that has ever existed. Oh, by the way, if you do want to join us here in the second hour, we'll go ahead and open up the phones at 281-558-KSEV, 281-558-5738. The Supreme Court had a lot of rulings today, a lot coming down via the Supreme Court. They ruled that state laws allowing the counting of mail-in ballots after Election Day are not in violation of federal law, which is interesting because it was a 5-4 ruling. You had Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts join with Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. A lot of people don't necessarily agree with this ruling. Now, states conduct their own elections, but when you're dealing with federal elections, well, fraud matters. And once again, if you talk to Democrats or talk to people that, I guess, either just don't want to admit it for whatever reason, they try to pretend that there is no voter fraud in this country. Voter fraud is rampant in this country. They say there is no voter fraud. Well, you point out cases where people are actually in prison for voter fraud. They go, okay, well, then it's minor. Well, if it's minor, you said it didn't exist a minute ago, and now you said it's minor. And then they move on to, well, okay, well, it is, but it's not bad. We're having elections decided by few amount of votes, very few in our country. On the state level, well, I'll tell you what, let's start out with the city level, then the county level, then the state level, and then on the federal level. They all lead to each other. And I do believe that counting mail-in ballots after Election Day is a bad idea. I think there needs to be something in place because we have to have something that goes through and starts getting these ballots, these mail-in ballots, by Election Day to be counted. So we can no longer continue this. The other thing, too, is with the ballot harvesting stuff going on in places like California, they can get as many votes as they need. Get them all postmarked and then just hang on to them. And then, okay, how many do we need after Election Day? Well, here we go. See you later, Spencer. That needs to be ruled in, which is, once again, a big reason why you have Donald Trump saying we need the Save America Act, which a certain Democrat says that is his attempt to steal elections. Methinks they project a bit. But anyway, that wasn't the only ruling by the Supreme Court today. The Supreme Court also ruled that Congress cannot shield the heads of independent regulatory agencies from presidential removal, overturned this landmark 1935 precedent. They also ruled that Trump's attempt to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook they said the president failed to provide her the procedural protections required by law. This was another 5-4 decision. We've got a split Supreme Court, folks. And then the Supreme Court also ruled to not take up the E. Jean Carroll case. This is such a strange case. I'm going to go into this now. By the way, if you want to join us here in hour number 2, 281-558-KSEV, 281-558-5738. So President Trump vowed to continue to fight the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, or the case, brought against him after the Supreme Court declined to even consider the case today. This is a very unique case for multiple reasons. Trump took to social media this morning to respond to the court's decision not to take the case. And, of course, Trump responded in the most Trumpian way possible. Surprisingly, the Supreme Court declined to review a fake case brought against me by a woman I never met. Decades-old celebrity photo line standing with her husband does not count. I will continue to fight against this weaponization and lawfare case against me, including the ridiculous claim of defamation, with all of my power and strength. Then he went to address that New York enacted the Adult Survivors Act in 2022 to allow this case to be brought against him. In other words, they extended the statute of limitations so this woman and her crazy allegations, her allegations are anything but sane. They're insane. She claims that Trump somehow took her in a department store, took her back in a dressing room or a bathroom, and then raped her. And then she went on interviews saying how rape is sexy. That's how most people see rape. What? And then couldn't remember what she was wearing or the date in which it happened or the time in which it happened. None of this stood up. But this Adult Survivors Act created a 1-year window for these victims, these alleged victims, of sexual assault to sue without the barrier of the statute of limitations. Trump said, this case is really against the United States of America and all that it stands for, and should never be allowed to happen to another president or candidate to be. That's another important point. It was known that Trump was running for president. They used this and then sunset it, by the way, only for 1 year, because as soon as they started coming out against the Democrat politicians, this case just all of a sudden, this law, this statute just went away. No. It was only designed to get Donald Trump. New York State created a law for instant speck of time going back many decades in order to wrongfully, quote-unquote, nab me. It was tailor-made, and this injustice cannot be allowed to stand. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Have a nice day. Have a good time. Now realize, Trump was never found to have raped this woman. New York found that he sexually assaulted her, which could be simply touching her arm in a strange way. But once again, the whole story made no sense. The woman's argument didn't convince anyone on the jury that he raped her, because he didn't. He wasn't convicted of rape. Trump was found liable, however, in the civil case, right, in order to pay E. Jean Carroll $5 million, and an appeals court upheld the ruling in December of 2024. Here's a really interesting aspect of the story. In a separate case, a civil jury ruled in January that Trump must pay Carroll $83 million over a social media commentary on the matter. He defended himself on social media, saying she's crazy and that he absolutely didn't have anything to do with her. And I do believe over time, anyone who's actually looked at the case, that she is a little crazy. She's a weird woman who wrote for a magazine and has said very, 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 very weird things. They've had, I remember it was the Anderson Pooper interview on CNN where she was talking about how rape is sexy, and just, she was talked about going and celebrating, and just, none of this makes any sense on any level. But it was Donald Trump, and they were out to get him. And of course, you can indict a ham sandwich, and well, they convicted this ham sandwich. The Second U.S. Court of Appeals rejected Trump's appeal of the defamation award in September. So they're saying at this point he must pay her $83 million in defamation and $5 million. So what is that, close to $90 million? $88 million? When she has no evidence, no witnesses, nothing from a rape case that supposedly happened in the 90s from a guy who claims he doesn't even know her. And it doesn't make any sense. Donald Trump would take her into a department store, rape her. She claims she was wearing a dress that hadn't been invented yet. That's right. The dress that she claimed she was raped in didn't exist yet. Came out later. There was obviously no evidence, simply because of her allegations, which still didn't add up. Okay. Trump has won, what was it, $15 million? Was it from ABC? When George Stephanopoulos called him a rapist multiple times, going after Nancy Mace, and she wouldn't play his little game because he's never been convicted of rape and he's not a rapist. Oh, sorry. Oh, bummer. I guess we can't do that, huh? So it's amazing they got these convictions, and it's amazing that it even went to the Supreme Court, and then they wouldn't see it. So Trump's clearly going to fight it, as he should. Like I said, I Yeah, it's almost astonishing. Anyway, all right, we got to take a break. All right, you're listening to Chris X Radio. We're here in the second hour. If you want to join us, 281-558-KSEV, 281-558-5738. It is the first day of the week of our 250th anniversary. July 4th is coming up on Saturday, which means I'm going to hear fireworks till probably 5 or 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. I've already been hearing fireworks going off. In fact, I've dubbed the term fireworks season now because anytime we get near July 4th or the New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, for about a week ahead of time, we start getting fireworks, and then they happen all day, and then they happen all night, and they go till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't think you're allowed to pop fireworks within the city limits of Houston proper. Man, I wish they could extend that to my neighborhood. I don't mind people popping fireworks, but, man, once you get past midnight, 1 a.m., that's a little weird. All right, 281-558-KSEV. I'm Chris X. We'll be right back.
If you have roof problems, you can sure see them when it rains. This is Deb Tejada from Tejas Roofing. If you see a leak, call me immediately, 281-251-0304. I'll send over the Tejas Roof Repair truck.
That truck has everything our experienced crew needs to fix your roof, right then and there.
The Tejas Roofing crew has been working together fixing leaky roofs for 15 years.
It's not a pretty truck, but it has everything we need to get the job done. I kind of like the way it looks.
Most roofing repairs cost less than $500. Why? Because we find the cause of the leak and repair that leak. We won't try to sell you services you don't need.
And we'll fix it right away because everything we need is in our truck.
Don't put off fixing a leaky roof. Call me at Tejas Roofing and I'll send over the truck. 281-251-0304. When you think of roofing repairs or a new roof, think Tejas Roofing, your Houston roofing company. 281-251-0304. That's Tejas Roofing, 281-251-0304.
Finding a reputable business shouldn't require luck or chance. But how can you tell who you can trust? Always look for the sign of a better business and find a better business anytime at bbb.org.
You know, where we go in life matters, and what we do matters, and we know that taking the wrong road won't produce the best outcomes. Hi, I'm Kathy with Baker Mortgage, and we want you to take the right path when it comes to your mortgage. You know, we live in a world of information overload, but always consider the source. And these are not generally going to be from your big bank or a random offer that comes across your screen. Remember, you're always going to get a better deal on one that you go looking for than one that comes looking for you. You need to deal with somebody who gives a you-know-what, whether or not you're happy in the end. At Baker Mortgage, we do it right. We haven't been around for 68 years because we're lucky. We don't sell CDs, insurance, or anything else. We just provide a great mortgage experience. Isn't that what you're looking for? Call us at Baker Mortgage. I promise you'll be glad you did. We're at 281-313-MOVE or go directly to bakermortgage.com.
Equal housing lender. License number 263213.
Do your employees need training in cybersecurity protocol? Call Technical Cyber Services to discuss options to make sure your company is secure. Call 713-229-0030 or go online at technicalcyberservices.com.
Start your mornings with the Chris Salcedo Show.
Chris Salcedo Show.
Hello, Chris Salcedo. How are you today?
Is this our hate-filled liberal from New York?
Not at all. This is the red-blooded American. You're lying propagandist.
And you say you're a chemical engineer? The dangers of socialism and communism, it produces mind-numbed idiots like you just heard?
You'll probably find 3,000 chemical engineers. They mix it in the bathtubs. They mix it in sheds, in the backyards, in 5-gallon buckets.
That's great, Chuck.
The Chris Salcedo Show, 7 to 9 a.m.
Okay, for only those listening on the radio at 700 a.m. or 1540 a.m. or listening on the stream at KSEVradio.com or the app, that was Ozzy, No More Tears. One of my favorite Ozzy songs. Probably, I don't know if my favorite, but it's one of the top 5 for sure. I read a great story over the weekend about Ozzy Osbourne. there was a story, Lita Ford, if you don't know, she was a guitar player for the Runaways and then had her own career for the Lita Ford. You know, so she went as a guitar player, singer, and she's actually a really good female guitar player. But she talked about, this was back in the 90s. It was Easter. Was it Easter? I can't remember what holiday it was. I think, no, it was Easter, I believe. And the story is, Ozzy Osbourne. He's the Prince of Darkness. He's this crazy Satan worshiper guy. He's this blah, blah. Well, he wasn't a Satan worshiper. And in fact, he was crazy, especially when he was younger. But as he got older, he sort of mellowed. But everybody who knew Ozzy or was his friends, he was one of those guys that was fiercely loyal and a good friend. He showed up unannounced at Lita Ford's family's home, her parents' house, with all her friends and family members on Easter, and they invited him in to have dinner. She said he could not have been, she knew him, of course, but her family never met him and didn't know him, and that Ozzy Osbourne just showed up and he had dinner with them, he ate with them, he went and talked to the family, talked to her, siblings and the parents and everybody that was there, stayed for the dinner, stayed after, hung around for a good time, and then left. Said, hey, everybody have a great night. Said he couldn't have been more gracious, couldn't have been more entertaining, and had no earthly idea why he showed up at her house for the holiday. But she said that was the kind of guy that Ozzy actually was. Ozzy got a bit of a bad rap here in Texas for a very long time because he got really plastered after one of his shows in San Antonio. I'm sure you probably heard this. And got out of, I guess it was a cab or something, and urinated on the wall. It wasn't actually part of the Alamo. It was one of the extending walls of the Alamo. But everybody believed that he urinated. And then the media, which we now know is fake news, they said that Ozzy peed on the Alamo. And they hated him in San Antonio. How dare you do this to one of the most important icons here, deals in Texas for our Texas history. Well, it turns out Ozzy didn't know where he was. He was plastered. He had no idea it was actually a part of the Alamo. And then he didn't go back. He got banned from San Antonio for a long time. He didn't go back there until much later when he was doing his, I guess, reality series with his son. And his son said, we're going to go back to San Antonio. And Ozzy was like, are you crazy? Are you effing crazy? They're going to kill me. They're going to hang me. They're going to lynch me in Texas. He said, no, they're not going to do that. So he went back, took an actual tour of the Alamo, officially apologized to everyone who was there, said he was so sorry, he had no idea, and he'd had a few drinks too many, probably a few other things too many, knowing Ozzy, and said he was immensely sorry for it and just couldn't apologize enough and was so thankful, and he was welcomed back with open arms. Texans are great forgiving people. So they forgave him, and then he was able to return to San Antonio. But it was part due to his son, bringing him over there, and I'm sure his son went and set it up, went and talked to people and said, hey, listen, Ozzy wants to come and apologize. And we've learned, like I said, over time, the story wasn't quite what the media told us. He wasn't some crazed British dude that came and just urinated on the Alamo. No, it wasn't. But how many people don't know that? They probably know just what they heard in the news. And what you heard in the news was crazy Ozzy Osbourne, his complete lack of respect for everything. He did that to the Alamo. Wasn't exactly the case. But it turns out that from all appearances from his family, he was actually a really good family man. They really liked to, like I said, the way he was good with his kids. He was good with his friends. He was a rock star. So he had his bouts with probably drugs and infidelity and God knows what. But he did, like I said, they said when it came to his family and friends, they said you couldn't have really a better friend than Ozzy was. So and once again, this is one of the cases where we were losing some of these great old, rock and rollers, and it's kind of sad losing them. It's amazing that Ozzy lived as long as he did, as crazy as he was when he was younger. It's amazing that a lot of these rock and rollers are still alive. Of course, we've now seen that a lot of them are dying off. A lot of the big ones from the bands that we grew up with, they're starting to die off, and it's sad, but that's what happens when you approach your 250th year as a nation. Anyway, okay, I didn't intend to tell the entire Ozzy story, that whole segment, but I just wasted the entire segment. All right, you're listening to ChrisX Radio. If you want to join us, we'll be back here. We'll take a short break. We've got, 2 segments remaining? So if you want to join us, you can get in. We'll talk a little bit more maybe about, the Supreme Court and what they're ruling against. Like I said, it was a mixed bag out of the Supreme Court today. I want to make a point. We'll get to this. I got James Talafrico and this Texas land commissioner defending him at the Democrat National Convention. By the way, I saw some video. There was a lot of empty seats at the Texas Democrat Convention. It didn't look like the turnout is what the Democrats are trying to sell us on. So what that gives me is the midterms are anything but decided at this point. But we'll get into that. And we got, of course, Democrat Chris Murphy saying that Trump is trying to rig the elections with the Save America Act, which completely tells me that that's not the case. All right, you're listening to ChrisXradio, 281-558 KSEV. We'll be right back.
If you have roof problems, you can sure see them when it rains. This is Deb Tejada from Tejas Roofing. If you see a leak, call me immediately, 281-251-0304. I'll send over the Tejas Roof Repair truck.
That truck has everything our experienced crew needs to fix your roof, right then and there.
The Tejas Roofing crew has been working together fixing leaky roofs for 15 years.
It's not a pretty truck, but it has everything we need to get the job done. I kind of like the way it looks.
Most roofing repairs cost less than $500. Why? Because we find the cause of the leak and repair that leak. We won't try to sell you services you don't need.
And we'll fix it right away because everything we need is in our truck.
Don't put off fixing a leaky roof. Call me at Tejas Roofing and I'll send over the truck. 281-251-0304. When you think of roofing repairs or a new roof, think Tejas Roofing, your Houston roofing company. 281-251-0304. That's Tejas Roofing, 281-251-0304.
If you're looking to buy or sell a home and in need of the best realtors out there, look no further than the Ronnie and Kathy Matthews Group. They've instilled in each and every member of their team hard work and honest values. And believe me, it's paid off. They truly know the Houston market and what it takes to get a home sold quickly and at top dollar and how to get the best deal possible for your home purchase. They're employee-owned. They care about their clients, so they always go the extra mile to ensure each sale and purchase is seamless and smooth. The Ronnie and Kathy Matthews Group have been a top-producing real estate team for over 2 decades. Call Ronnie and Kathy Matthews Group at 281-440-7900 or see for yourself and go online at thematthewsteam.com. That's thematthewsteam.com. They sell over 1,000 homes a year, and they know every inch of the buying and selling market in Houston. Call Ronnie and Kathy Matthews Group. I chose them as my realtor. The Ronnie and Kathy Matthews Group, your realtors for life. 281-440-7900 or see for yourself online at thematthewsteam.com. That's thematthewsteam.com.
That's the Ronnie and Kathy Matthews Group, brokered by EXP.
Offices located 1 Sugar Creek Center, Sugar Land, Texas.
Thinking of buying a home? It's important to start off with a solid pre-approval. Hi, I'm Kathy Baker from Baker Mortgage. Yes, we ask a lot of questions, but that's because we're not going to give you a pre-approval that's going to blow up as you're trying to cross the finish line. What's figured in there for property taxes? If it didn't come up, you really don't know what you're pre-approved for. That should make you wonder what else they may have left out. At Baker Mortgage, we get it right. We haven't been around for 60 years because we're lucky. Yes, we have wholesale rates, 80-10-10s, and all kinds of programs, but in the end, it's really about taking good care of people, and they continue to come back and send their kids, their friends, and sometimes their parents. Whether you're buying, building, or refinancing, call us at Baker Mortgage. We're at 281-313-6683. That's 281-313-MOVE or directly at bakermortgage.com.
Equal housing lender. License 263213.
All right, welcome back to ChrisXradio. I'm the aforementioned X-Man. We've got this segment and one more remaining. So if you want to get in before we run out of time, 281-558-KSEV, 281-558-5738. Okay, so over the weekend, I guess it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe, I don't even know. The Texas Democrat Convention, the state convention, took place in Corpus Christi. Now, Corpus Christi is a nice place. It's a great little beach town. Nonetheless, a bunch of Democrats apparently descended upon the area, but it wasn't as many as you might think. There were actually a fair amount of open seats at the convention hall. But also something very interesting happened, which is hilarious considering. So the Democrat nominee for Texas Land Commissioner was defending James Talafrico at the convention last week. Ben Flores told the crowd at the convention in Corpus Christi that if James is trans, we're all trans. He actually said a few things. I think this is a weird strategy, and the more they try to embrace this strategy, I'll just say the more November is in play. Take a listen. This is Ben Flores from...
Next time they say that James is trans, we're all trans. When they say James is a gay tofu-eating vegan, we're all gay tofu-eating vegans. And when they say James is going to hell, we'll say we're all going to hell. But joke's on them.
But is it on them, really? That's pretty funny when they all embrace going to hell. I thought that was kind of funny. And I edited a little bit of some of the applause out of there because they were all applauding like this is great. So the Democrats are going to embrace the idea that James Talafrico loves the trans children. He's a fanboy for the tranny podcast host. He fanboys and loves her work. Her. I'm not sure what sort of trans, but he's a big fan. The guy is way too excited for trans people. And call yourself a straight white male, or he calls himself a cis white male. They gotta somehow tarnish being heterosexual. That doesn't play real well with normal folks. But they call him a gay tofu-eating vegan. Says we're all going to be gay tofu-eating vegans. Well, James was the one who claimed that eating meat is an existential threat. So they had to cut it out. Then he campaigned on a meatless campaign before immediately doing a 180 and saying his campaign is powered by Texas barbecue now. So are we going to get the James now or are we going to get the James then? Which Talafrico do we get if, in fact, he is elected in November? And then, of course, he's got his non-binary God, Jesus for transing the children. I mean, there's always, you guys know I have his greatest hits. I like to play them every now and then so you guys can actually hear what he said out of his own mouth.
Did they teach you in Sunday school that Jesus Christ himself was a radical feminist?
No.
The American flag is such a complicated symbol for most of us.
Is it?
God is non-binary.
You can't call yourself a Christian and reject the stranger seeking asylum at our southern border.
Our trans community needs abortion care too.
Modern science obviously recognizes that there are many more than two biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
Prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness. Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front. We are trying to fundamentally change the politics in this state and in this country.
Yep. No need to sit and cry over, your whiteness or your masculinity.
I guess if you're crying over your own whiteness, does that make you a racist? You feel as though being white makes you a racist? So you have to cry over your own whiteness? That sounds kind of racial to me. Or being ashamed of the American flag? You're ashamed of it? It's hard to reckon with the American flag. How much you want to bet he's wearing an American flag this week or this weekend? Anybody want to put any money on it? I finally saw one of his television commercials. It was this weekend. And it was him coming out of a store carrying a bag of something, I don't know, small, looked like groceries, and him just basically campaigning on all the things that he's fought against, but now trying to take credit for them, which shouldn't shock anyone. And then he's getting in a truck because he's Texas just like you and me. That is how they're going to use $150 million to rebrand this guy to somehow convince the suckers of America, the suckers here in Texas to elect a trans-loving, trans-kid-loving, trans-podcast host-loving weirdo who's trying to parade around as a moderate. Even though he's got a record to run on as a Texas House representative. And we know that record that he's trying to run on is anything but moderate. In fact, it is as far left as you can possibly get. But he's running from that now. But don't worry, Ben Flores and the rest of the state convention last week were just saying that if he's a gay tofu-eating vegan, we're all gay tofu-eating vegans. And if they say he's going to hell, we're all going to hell. I don't know who's necessarily said that, but I've heard people talking about him, his apostasy, if you will. He has clearly used the Bible to try to push his weird trans agenda, his pro-abortion agenda. Things that the Bible really, I don't think there's a lot of trans stuff in the Bible. Is there a secret trans thing that I've missed? Maybe you guys can enlighten me on. 281-558 KSEV, 281-558-5738. Maybe there's secret parts of the Bible where Jesus comes out and he's for abortion or for trans kids. It's just, he's an interesting guy. Is Texas ready for this kind of a senator? Well, they don't think so because they're now trying to rebrand him that he is anything but what he actually is and what he said and what he stands for. He's now a totally different human being. He said things to be provocative. He doesn't actually believe those things. He's just being provocative. So wait, you said those things to be provocative to win the primary. So basically what you're saying is Democrat voters shouldn't vote for him because he's not really that. He's what the rest of the state would like. Is that what you're trying to convince us of? They're going to work really hard to try to convince you that he is anything but what he has stood for in the state house for the last few years in Texas. They're going to spend $100+ million to try to convince you that he is somehow a moderate guy. A moderate, white, heterosexual male who is the only lines we found that people that he supposedly dated, women, are members of his campaign. Or was it Dana Lash was calling her, you said that could be his beards? You know, I'm sure you've probably heard the story before. If you, if a gay guy is pretending to date a woman, that's his beard. So, but there's really no evidence of him dating other women in other cases. And he does have a bit of, we'll just say maybe a little effeminate nature, but the good thing is he's a Christian who hates Christianity.
I always think of myself as a Christian who hates Christianity.
What? And then, of course, he's always said,
God is non-binary.
Okay, so God is non-binary, but at least the good thing is about trans children.
Something that you love that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind.
I love, and I'm just saying this because it's on my mind. Okay, what do you love, James?
The trans children who showed up yesterday at the state capitol to advocate for their humanity. They shouldn't have to, but it was an inspiration to watch.
Once again, they're trying to rebrand this dude in real time as hard as they possibly can. All right, we got to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Looks like we got T-Air. T-Air, hold on for me. I'm probably not in Jersey Village. We'll pick up with T-Air on the other side. Always enjoy hearing from T-Air. Oh, I can only imagine what T-Air thinks about Mr. Telefrico. In fact, I'm looking forward to your comments on this. All right, you're listening to ChrisX Radio. If you want to get in line after T-Air, 281-558 KSEV, 281-558-5738. You're listening to ChrisX Radio. We've got one segment remaining, and then we're done. We'll turn things over to the Craig Collins program, which airs here at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We'll be right back.
Radio.
Plumbing emergencies never happen at a convenient time. Usually they happen on the weekends, holidays, or while you're away on vacation. I'm Richard Sod. president of Nick's Plumbing. When you find yourself facing a plumbing emergency, call the licensed and experienced professionals at Nick's Plumbing and Sewer Services. Nick's Plumbing has been Houston's first choice for all your plumbing needs since 1979. Our experts can take your most difficult plumbing issues and fix them fast, fix them right, and usually for less than you'd expect. Nick's Plumbing and Sewer Services is the right choice for any plumbing job, from a leaky faucet, whole house repipe, or a complete sewer line replacement. You can count on Nick's Plumbing to do the job right. With over 40 years in business and over 150,000 satisfied customers, Nick's wants to be your plumbing company. Nick's Plumbing offers free estimates and free second opinions. Call Nick's Plumbing and Sewer Services, 713-868-9907, or visit us on the web, nicksplumbing.com.
NPL 38548.
Call Nick's Plumbing today. We're on the way.
This is Kevin O'Hara with O'Hara & Company Real Estate. Our country's founding fathers drafted a document that is the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. My friends at O'Hara & Company Real Estate, we believe we're at a precipice in time where we must take back our country. We must stand up for our freedoms or lose them forever. Please don't sit idle and let it slip away. Don't let anyone force you to do something you choose not to. As JFK said, if not us, who? If not now, when? If you're looking to buy or sell real estate, give O'Hara & Company Real Estate a call at 281-373-3393, 281-373-3393, or look us up on the web at o'harare.com. I'm Kevin O'Hara. God bless America, and God bless Texas.
Dan Patrick for my friend Louis Flory and Ability Tree Experts. Spring is here and summer just around the corner, which means it's time to deep root fertilize your trees in addition to spraying for insects and disease. Let Ability Trees help maintain their value and repair all damage. Fed and pruned tree will be less susceptible to wind damage and uprooting. Caring for the beautiful and valuable trees on your property that you can't replace should be done by experts. And the experts I use, it's very clear. It's Ability Tree Experts and Louis Flory, my friend for over 40 years. Gosh, this guy is the pro when it comes to taking care of trees. You know, pruning is important for the health of your trees, and pruning limits resistance to spring storms and allows the sun and fresh air into the canopy. Trees can be in distress several months without showing any signs, so don't wait to protect your investment at 281-441-4179, 281-441-4179, or visit their website at abilitytrees.com. Right now, Ability Trees is giving a deep root feeding with every tree prune. Ability Trees, Houston's leading tree care professional.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. Welcome back to ChrisXradio. You've reached the final segment of the program today. Glad to have you here with us. We're going to turn things over here at 6 p.m. to the Craig Collins Show, which airs here each weeknight at 6 p.m. here on The Voice on 700 a.m., 1540 a.m. Of course, you get the video if you want to watch the video at the multiple locations as well. But make sure you stick around for the Craig Collins program here only on The Voice of Texas. Glad to have you here with us. We'll wrap up ChrisXradio. Once again, this entire week I'm going to be wearing my patriotic shirts, my 1776, 2026, the 250th anniversary. I remember celebrating the bicentennial, then there was the sesquicentennial, and this is I don't have no clue what you'd actually call it. I can't, there's a lot, it's hard to pronounce. But we are, as we roll into the 250th anniversary of this experiment in democracy, a republic, if you will. And as was it Benjamin Franklin? They asked him, they said, what do you have there? And I think he said, you have a republic if you can keep it. 250 years in, we're still fighting communists to try to keep from taking our republic. And they're getting elected in places like New York and California and Minnesota. I saw, Jacob Fry, mayor of Minnesota, or Minneapolis, was celebrating Somali independence. Because that's important for us to celebrate the independence of Somalia here in the United States as we get ready to celebrate 250 years ago. Pander much? All right, 281-558-KSEV, 281-558-5738. Let's go to Tierre before we run out of time. Tierre, thank you for hanging on. Welcome to ChrisX Radio. Tierre, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now, Tierre.
Can
Go
you hear
right
me?
ahead. I got you. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, Chris, it's been a wonderful summer. I've gotten an internship. I'm working at a law office. But what I find so funny about, James Tallarico, Frico, every day of the weeko, this guy does not have a personality. If you pay attention, the Democrats literally have stock puppets. First off, they go screaming about, oh, Nazis, Nazis, but then they literally get a guy who's literally a Nazi, and now they're trying to play it off as, no, it's not what it seems. Meanwhile, we've been suffering from phrases like Nazi, fascist, racist, bigot, homophobe, and it's like, then you guys go and you get closet homophobes, you get closeted racist, you get everything over there. You just put a closet in front of them, and I guess it's a bigger tent party, right? All right? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, the funniest thing about a person like, James Tallarico, Frico, every day of the weeko, he's not even trying to sneako. But he does keep a blow. This guy is sincerely twisted. And I think that what we have to understand now going forward, look at Andrew Gilliam over there in Florida. And there's been quite a few of these, closeted weirdo type personalities for the last couple of years. Remember, even up in New York, even though he was claiming to be a Republican and so on and so forth, he got kicked out because eventually they said, well, he's actually gay and he's not this and he's not that. He claims to be a Republican. Well, here's the problem. And this is where I encourage us to start digging deeper. Because you guys should already know there's a group of people who work out in this world who what they do is that they push somebody with all these little claws dug into them about who they really are, so that way they can twist them, bend them, and continually abuse them to keep themselves in power. And when I say keep themselves in power, I'm not talking about the congressman, okay? We have to have a sobering understanding that there needs to be a healthy distrust of our government all the time. We must remain vigilant. Guys, I miss the 90s. I miss the X-Files. I remember It's the Government. I remember the smoking guy, the guy who was smoking a corner with a trench coat and would sit there and disappear, and he was actually an FBI or CIA agent, or he was part of the media, one of the Fourth Estate members. Remember that statement? But unfortunately, I guess because September 11th, because of our admiration for those who are willing to die for our freedom, we begin to get away from a distrust and begin to embrace them. And what's happened now is that you have these guys who have no personality. They can't even tell you what they really are about because, hey, they're like every politician we've ever had in history. Again, tell me an innovative story about a politician that has no personality, smiles for the camera, and lies every time. Remember, my friends, Ronald Reagan once said, hey, the only threat there is whenever you hear somebody say, hi, I'm here to help, and I'm from the government. Remember, my friends, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. That's my time, and I'm out.
Man, thank you for the call, Tierre. As always, man, you were exceptionally funny today. I like that one. James Tallarico, a Frico every day of the weeko. That's really good. Like I said, I heard some people referring to him as, well, he's now pedo O'Rourke. So that's kind of funny, too. I think you nailed it, though. He really has no personality. In fact, I'll even just play a little audio from him at different campaign stops being played at the exact same time.
I've gone to every corner of Texas over the course of this campaign, from Beaumont to El Paso, from Amarillo to Brownsville, and everywhere in between. And I can't tell you the number of people who come up to me at the end of these events and whisper, I'm not a Democrat, like they're in the witness protection program.
I mean, the guy is simply reciting lines. You're right on. And then the other aspect of it, it's either somebody with absolutely no personality whatsoever that you just could not have nailed, who may be an effeminate heterosexual or, well, I mean, who knows what he is. Who cares? I don't care. We care about what he loves, and what he loves is trans children and trans podcast hosts. He's he's a fanboy. That's weird to me, to be a grown man That's very weird. And then the other side of the spectrum is they literally vote for Nazis, a guy with a Nazi tattoo on his chest that is a walking #MeToo, that has abused women, abuses women. He literally stands for everything they claim to be against. And they put this guy up because we have to remove who from Congress? Susan Collins of Maine. That radical. Susan Collins is the most left-wing voting Republican in the Senate. And they put up a Nazi against her. I don't think they're going to win. If they do, then we're further off down that wrong road than ever. But you couldn't have nailed it any better. Thank you for the call. Always good to hear from our good friend Thierry, who, like I said, I love the way Thierry looks at it. He looks at the world very similar to the way that I do. All right, let's go to Jimmy X before we run out of time. Jimmy, thank you for hanging on. Welcome to Chris Radio.
Well, I'll try to close here, but I think it's a little unfair that you're putting me after Thierry. Because, man, that is one hard act to follow.
Yeah, he was really good today. He was hilarious, too.
So it's the 225 was the semi-quincentennial, but now that America has evolved, it's really, this one is America 250, okay? 250. That's it. That's all you got to say.
That's it. It's America 250. We're good. Just go with that, and okay, all right. I can handle that. It's a lot easier than whatever that long thing they call it.
So, and Chris X, I may owe you an apology on Friday on the Amigos. I know that Chris Salcedo has spoken about it, but there was something several weeks ago about John Cornyn saying that he was going to support the independent candidate for Senate. And I thought you possibly had talked about that as well. So I may have gotten over my skis a little bit by saying that I'd heard the discussion on your show and Salcedo's show.
I haven't talked much about it. I don't know what John Cornyn's going to do, so I haven't really discussed it.